where there are a lot of languages that use one word for the same thing all the way across in each one of us. But you see, you're a millennial.
Yeah. Proud of it. Most days.
And millennials have their own culture, their own way of looking at things, their own language, and they're raising up the kids that are seeing the world from a different perspective.
Completely different.
What's that?
Completely different, and that's a treat.
And that's a treat. Yeah, you see, you're a treat, but not all millennials are treats.
The difference is I'm a millennial raised by a boomer versus a millennial raised by a Gen Xer.
Wow. I know where you learned that from. I know where you learned that from.
No, my husband was also raised by a boomer. And we've realized the difference between us two and other millennials around us is we were raised by boomers versus Gen Xers. Not anything bad about Gen Xers.
Let's expound upon that. We're kind of done with treat. We've expanded. We've done everything with treat. But see, this is a huge interest to me. Interest to me. And so I love millennials. And let me clarify real quick. We still got a few more minutes here, and this really was somewhere I was going to go on today's show. Is that to clarify what Sarah just said was something that I say all the time, because usually, and it's one of the reasons most of us baby boomers don't like millennials, is because millennials were kids raised by kids. Mm-hmm. It's because there was a generation where us boomers didn't put enough value on our kids to raise them by us. We, the husband and wife, went to work and let somebody, the school system, the public school system, or somebody else raise our kids, and then the kids didn't have the value system of baby boomers and those that came before. And so they were kids raised by kids then got pregnant and raised kids with those values they had, not the values we had. And that's the way I look at millennials, because of that generation in between the baby boomers and the millennials. Sarah, on the other hand, like she just said, and her husband were raised by baby boomers that did have a value in you and spent time raising you instead of just pushing you aside and that type of thing. So both of us did work from time to time, but we did spend time with you.
Yeah. And Cameron and I both were raised, his tummy hurts.
Oh, come on. We're okay. It's okay.
So we were also the babies. So Cameron and I both have adult big brothers. We both have brothers. And his brothers are 13 and 14 years older than he is, and my brothers are like 12 and 13 years older than me. So we were raised not only by parents that had already parented for many years and then had us, but they were also boomers. And so we have different values than most people our age of life.
Well, your two brothers, which are considered, they were like, 11 and 12 when you were born?
Something like that.
11 and 12, 12 and 13, something like that when you were born. They had been raised in a rough setting because their dad died when they were 8 months and a year and 8 months old. Yeah. And your mom had to raise those two boys, and it was a rough, tough situation for her and the boys. Then I came along and you came along, and we tried really hard to raise the three of you with a special value system, because now there was a man in the house. Now there was a more structured situation in the home. The boys, who are both incredible men, great men, that are good, but yet they have a different value system than you do.
Yeah.
See? And so it's generation, but it's however that generation's raised. And I think it's just amazing to me how the thought process, just based on when you were born, works.
Oh yeah.
I really do. That just blows me away, because it's really only documented in the past 60, 70 years. Before that, we have thousands of years, but you don't read any documentation on those generations. In Wikipedia, you can look up the word generation, and it literally talks about a lot of this. And I may be talking about this on shows that are coming up, and there's a series in Wikipedia called Major Generations of the Western World. And they list off like lost generation, greatest generation, silent generation, baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, Generation Z, Generation Alpha, and each one of them explain in detail. And it's an incredible read for anybody that's interested. I think what's another interesting thing is that millennials are actually Generation Y, because you have an X and a Z on either side of you. And I did read that in there, and I guess I never realized that before. But
we were raised in the millennium, the new millennium.
Yeah, when it changed 2000 and on is when you were born. Or when the millennials. So it was
so when 2000 happened, most of us millennials were born in the 80s or the 90s, and our most influential time was that late 90s and early 2000s, which was when that new millennium happened.
Exactly.
So we are the millennials.
Yep.
I was 8 years old when it was 2000. Very influential back then.
Yeah, and I was getting old. I was getting old. All right. Well, this is it.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.